Hey, Veiled Seekers, welcome to the Veiled Path Podcast. My name is Froilan. I am your host. So, today we got a very special interview. I am interviewing Ike Baker. A little bit on Ike's background. Ike Baker is a ceremonial magician, author, independent scholar, content creator, and international speaker and lecturer. As a ceremonialist, Ike is a senior adept of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the Rigardi Cicero lineage, as well as the Martinist Order of America, Blue Lodge, and York Rite Freemasonry, and belongs to several other initiatory and esoteric orders. As an author, Ike released the highly praised book, A Formless Fire, Rediscovering the Magical Traditions of the West in 2024, and the widely acclaimed Etheric Magic, A Complete System of Elemental, Celestial, and Alchemical Magic in 2025, which has been translated into multiple languages. Ike's forthcoming release, With Inner Traditions, Esoteric Mythology, the Generative and Transformative Power of the Imagination, is set for publication in November of this year. Ike also hosts the ARCANVM YouTube channel and podcast where he produces documentary-style content on esotericism and philosophy, and facilitates conversations with some of the foremost authors and practitioners and scholars in related fields. In 2024, Ike co-founded the Hermopolis Symposium with Dr. Mervat Abdel Nasser, an international academic conference held at the new Hermopolis Eco Village in Minya, Egypt, and also hosts the Southeastern Masonic Symposium in Asheville, North Carolina. He has given presentations at Oxford University, the Cairo Museum in Cairo, Egypt, the Grand Lodges of Washington, D.C. and New York, the Philosophical Research Society in Los Angeles, California, Watkins Bookshop in London, England, and was most recently the keynote speaker at this year's Esotericon in Manassas, Virginia. Ike will be traveling to various states in the U.S. this year, as well as to Amsterdam, Italy, and the U.K. as part of a speaking tour to promote the release of his forthcoming book. For more information, visit ikebaker.com. I'm really excited to get into this conversation with Ike. So without further ado, let's get to it. Ike Baker, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always exciting when people reach out and want to talk to me. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of your ARCANVM podcast. And through the grapevine, I've encountered you as a Mason and also through your work, particularly etheric magic that you see behind me. I'm so glad we could get this interview going. I came across your work and your podcast while reading Etheric Magic. A little bit of my background real quick. I came from more of a Eastern esoteric understanding. I studied primarily yoga. But before I had a real thorough practice bringing that over into the West, I started dipping my toes into more esoteric Western writers. And I recall hearing about this book. So I picked up this book, and I gotta say, I really love the work you did in that book of basically blending both the Eastern, what seems like Taoist in the book, but the Taoist and the Kabbalistic works of the past.
Well, I appreciate that. What kind of yoga did you study?
So I mainly started with asana yoga, but, I read the Yoga Sutras, and then I really started understanding the history. But primarily my Eastern background was through Vedanta. So I was really attracted to Ramakrishna, and later on became very interested in Swami Vivekananda. So I studied Vedanta through them. But Vivekananda particularly has a lot of commentary on the Yoga Sutras. So it was really through that lens that I came through. But, I had a background in Christianity and whatnot, but before that, I was always attracted to Buddhism. So as I studied Vedanta, you really can't study Vedanta without getting into Buddhism, because it's like Buddhism and Vedanta are like piggybacking off of each other left and right. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense that you'd be into Vivekananda. He was a Freemason, but
Yeah.
very accessible stuff, particularly for Westerners. But yeah, that's cool. I started out with a lot of that stuff too. Actually, the philosophy was, what I would say rooted in certain Vedic traditions, but more so the practice, right? Kind of groping in the dark for something,
Right.
which when I was younger, it was, you didn't have access to this stuff. The occult was considered by and large strictly satanic, and Freemasons were viewed by and large as an evil cabal. Well, they still kind of are in a lot of communities that have endemic mental illness to them.
Right.
But overall, what was available to me was, what I call the exoticization of spirituality. This dramatic outsourcing of spirituality to the East. And so my practice actually started when I was 18 in Zen. I studied with a Roshi in upstate New York. But, and the first organization I belonged to, believe it or not, was the Theosophical Society when I was living in Manhattan, living in New York City.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Many years ago, even before the Golden Dawn. And then I accidentally sort of stumbled into the Golden Dawn in search of a Kabbalah study group, really because, and I'm sure you've heard me tell this story 100 times, but because of, I found a book in a dead lady's apartment. So, that kind of, I stumbled into it, and it wasn't, believe it or not, the practice for a while, just on top of having to learn more intensely Kabbalistic theory and practical Kabbalah, there was still at the time a lot of theosophical, quasi-Indian, or I should say Vedic, and certainly, Taoist approaches in my temple. So it's only very, very recently, I would say within the last 5 or 6 years, that I've been able to find groups that are strictly, insofar as that is possible, but more strictly adhering to or focusing on the Western tradition.
In the book, you mentioned that you were initiated into an Eastern modality. So, was that modality that you mentioned in the book, was that the Zen temple that you joined?
In part, I would say the real Eastern modality that I was formally initiated into was a private, one-on-one, master to disciple tutelage with somebody who, was not, he was Thai, Thai, and with Chinese ancestry. Whole family was Thai, and it was under, I would say, the pretext of, or it started out as training martial arts, and then from there evolved into Tai Chi, and then from there into Qigong, and was inevitably drawn further and further in, from what they call an outer door to an inner door student. Now you were practicing, you were observing the holidays, like on the Chinese New Year. My duty as an acolyte, an inner door student, as part of these several initiations that I underwent. Part of my duty was to bring offerings. We would offer oranges to Bodhidharma on the Lunar New Year, things of this nature. But yes, certainly it was a Taoist, primarily a Taoist esoteric lineage that was passed down, master to disciple in that way. So I learned how to be an apprentice at that point, and not just somebody, not one of these people like modern Western people who just like it's a fucking buffet. of
Right.
whatever you like. And I'm only here, like, I'll sit in the back and answer when I feel like I'm called to, when I have something to say, and everything devolves into a share circle of whose truth is their truth, and that's not the way to learn anything. There's so many assumptions about what the individual already knows, hardwired into them. So as they sit there in that water, they are impermeable. They're waiting for something that affirms their biases. And
Right.
so my experience as a one-to-one acolyte in almost total submission, willing submission to this direct pedagogy, which is a privilege for somebody to transmit the highest forms of their knowledge to you and
Truly.
oversee your development. It trained me to understand that truly, if you really want what they have, you have to let go of what you are holding on to.
I identify with that. You really are blessed for finding a teacher like you did. When I joined, I became initiated to Diksha through the Ramakrishna monks, and they call themselves a hands-off organization. So they will initiate you. If you have any questions, you come to them, but really listen to their talks. There's not going to be many individual meetings one-on-one. It's sort of like they give you the practice, they give you the routine, and then they send you your way. I do recall even trying to find more Chinese-oriented practices. I became very fascinated with Chan practice, but primarily Taoist practice. So I saw all that in the book, all the Qigong work, and a lot of the mudras and whatnot were basically from that tradition. So I was picking up on that.
Yeah, different attributions to the fingers in terms of the elements, obviously, because we have the Wu Jing in Chinese elemental theory, which includes fire, earth, metal, water, and wood.
Yes.
So it's not the fivefold system. I had to adapt that in particular, but and I also at the same time I was studying Chinese medicine.
Okay.
I went to school for that. First, I went for body work.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I studied Chinese medicine, acupuncture, and herbalism. So I learned meridian theory. I mean, half of my bookshelves here are Chinese medical textbooks and things that are extremely expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But,
They are.
I got a lot of them on student loans, though. But there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm steeped in that stuff. I am not called necessarily to teach it the way I learned it. Mm-hmm. Right, which is devoid, almost completely of that Western influence. I'm called to, I don't want to say graft, but certainly to interpret. I do feel like I'm not great at many things in life, but I will say that you can ask my wife. There's some days where like I can barely tie my shoes, but at the end of the day, I know what I'm doing, and I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Western traditions of, Hellenistic, Hermetic philosophy, Gnostic philosophy, and religio philosophy, and the practice of ceremonial magic as it comes to us in the West. So, having that really, really strong background and practice, I think I'm able to somewhat successfully begin to try and interpret the Eastern stuff in the light of the Western and have it come across as something that is workable and authentic rather than a kind of what am I trying to say, a tapestry of many different colors and patches. I think I tried to make something very holistic and beautiful. I tried.
I mean, you speak the language of your people. So, as much as I'm thankful for these organizations or families or lineages that make their way here, they might influence a few people here and there, but it's really going to be through the inspiration of somebody born and raised here who knows this area that's really going to take it and give it to the masses, because that's just how these things take hold. Even in, we'll get into it, but even in Christianity's background, that's kind of how the converts spread the message. They needed people in those areas to really do it.
Yeah, and well, at the very least, people who were conversant in the, religio-philosophical lingua franca of the regions, for sure.
And so, getting into that a little bit, what led you out of that confined Eastern tradition to now look into Kabbalah? Is it just through the happenstance of finding that book?
Yeah, well, I had been interested in all things quote unquote spiritual. I've got a notebook that I found that goes all the way back to 2004, and it's got a graph, a circle graph that I don't even know how to read it now. But it's got Gnosticism and Aristotle somewhere around the Trimurti in the center, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. I was, and it wasn't like just me doodling stuff. It was dated, and I know exactly where it came from my comparative religions class that I took at Manhattanville College in Purchase, New York, when I was enrolled there as a freshman in college. Okay, so I have been studying this shit for a really long time, but without even, necessarily realizing how long that I've been doing it. And thank God I keep all my notebooks. It's just kind of a compulsion. So but the thing is, like, aside from your collegiate level stuff at the freshman and sophomore level, and like Dan Brown occultism, which was what was available to me as a kid on Long Island, right. At least in my sphere of awareness, it was a smorgasbord, right? I was very, very much in step with my time and my generation, and who was very, very non-committal and just wanted as much information as possible. And I'm gonna put it together according to like how I like it, like a plate, arranging things in food in the way these things can't touch, so on and so forth, regardless of the reality. So, in seeking, I was finding little bits and pieces. Obviously, meditation is something that I can never, ever part with. Learned that at an early age, obviously, with Zen, and it evolved into Chan processes because, the Chan practices are part and parcel with particularly Shaolin Kung Fu, which I learned a form called Shaolin Long Fist, Liang Buchuan, and, the Chan breathing exercises were given to me and this kind of stuff. But so I was interested in all of it, and I was kind of topically, partially, bits and pieces informed of Western Kabbalah and Freemasonry, Gnosticism, so on and so forth. And then, there was a shift happening in my life. It was one of those things that just kind of occur, maybe 3, if you're lucky, times in your life where a gate is opening, and in the parlance of young kids now, the timeline was about to be, there was a choice to make, and my aunt had a tenant who threw herself in front of a train. She's a very quiet lady, school teacher. My aunt asked me to come down because when she went down to the apartment, it was filled with stacks of books, journals wrapped in cellophane, so on and so forth. She's like, it's heavy to box these things up and move them. Can you come and help me? I did. I saw a little book. The cover design caught my eye. It was called The Oracle of Kabbalah by Richard Seidman. I still have the exact copy on my in the Kabbalah section of my bookshelves over here. And I said, hey, can I take this? And she said, yeah, of course. And I walked around my neighborhood in a day. It's very thin. I read it. And by the end of it, I was like, I didn't know. I wasn't so enlightened about Kabbalah, but something was scratching on the inside. And this is important. You should get into this. And I went on the yellow pages or white pages, whatever they were, when people did that, and I typed in Long Island Kabbalah Study Group. Got this guy's information. I reached out to him. He reaches back out. He says, that group doesn't meet anymore, but there's this other thing. And the other thing was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And so that was my first exposure to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. I was given one book in particular to read as an introduction, and then I met with them. And in that meeting, I did my formal petition, and we kind of went back and forth in email. Okay, this is going to be your initiation date, and I never showed up. because in the back of my head, I was like, do these people think they're doing like Harry Potter wand waving shit? This is crazy.
I mean, to you, that's all you knew at that time. Like,
right. And I grew up Catholic. So, magic. But it's many years later, actually. It was a long time. I reached back out because my life fell apart. And it, like drastically, dramatically, full, like total collapse. And there was nothing left. Just me. And I don't know why, but that itch started coming again and said, you got to go back. You need to do this. Okay? So I chose the way of pain. I closed the door on the timeline, and then everything fell to shit. And it's like, okay, now will you go? Because it's only going to get harder if you resist. And so I went back hat in hand, asked them to take me back, and being the people they are, the Golden Dawn, what it is, they accepted. And the rest is history, as they say. I do what I do now. I'm a senior adept of the order. I run the North Carolina temple with 2 other fantastic temple chiefs. Yeah.
Were you in contact directly with the Ciceros, or
Not
were you
at
speaking to
first,
somebody?
no.
Okay.
I am now. You talk
Okay.
right. I love Chicken Tabby, but
Yeah.
and certainly they're mentors to me now. But at first, no way. It's I guess I could have written to them if I was in their area, but I wasn't. So you just kind of get filtered to whatever, even if there is a temple near you. We don't have temples all over in every state.
Right. So you joined at a very interesting point in your life, and again, you grew up Catholic, studied some Eastern spirituality. Once you joined the order, what was your experience like after joining?
Well, there was a tumult in the temple, as there typically can be, and is in any of these groups.
Historically, tends to be.
Yeah, historically. There was a large kind of exodus, and what happened was, in that period, the temple was kind of set in abeyance for a short period of time, but enough to make me nervous. And then it was at that point that I realized what the Golden Dawn actually was, what it meant to people. People would kill, but probably literally, but to have this in their backyard. And here I am thinking all I've got is a college 101 class and some Dan Brown novels. The Golden Dawn is 20 minutes from me. So I, at that point, it kind of lit a fire under my ass, like, what's going on? And I was invited, to kind of reconstitute the temple. And I still didn't know anything about it because I was told right at the outset, don't read your ritual, right? Ritual is supposed to be a surprise. It's not just a surprise. You like shouldn't know what's going on at the time. There are things embedded, particularly into ritual that is based in Freemasonic ritual, which is 95% of the stuff out there, even the Wiccan witchcraft stuff. It's all Golden Dawn, which is based out of Freemasonry. There are layers to it that are supposed to impress things upon you that cannot be impressed upon you if you are projecting expectation and meaning into those things immediately. You should be a blank slate. You need to be in an impressionable state. And so this impressionable state where I was suspending judgment, I allowed myself to cultivate that skill to almost an art. And I did not project my expectations or interpretations into the Golden Dawn. It'd be like if you and I went out for coffee and I sat and told you the whole time who I thought you were, and then up time to leave. I would never have known who you actually are. And so in not knowing anything about the Golden Dawn and refusing to research, I was very present, and I allowed the system as an initiatory system with a curriculum and a pedagogy that is taught by teachers in the order, right? I allowed that to reveal itself to me. And as it unfolded, I did experience crazy shit. When I was a kid, I was very sensitive. I used to see, I guess some people would call them shadow people, would hear voices and things like this, and it just scared the hell out of me. So I shut it all down. Well, a year into my Golden Dawn initiation, maybe not even, I'm doing astral travel and path workings, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night, and there are figures, full color figures standing in my room. It was like, I like to make the joke, if you've ever seen the movie Ghostbusters, it's like the trap opened and all the ghosts came out.
Yeah.
It's like that's kind of what happened. And but that's a side effect of what's supposed to go on in the Golden Dawn, particularly as an outer court, an outer order, is alchemical initiation, which breaks you down to your most essential elements, which is a very difficult thing to go through psychologically and emotionally, right? And then it puts you back together under the auspices of quintessence, or spirit, as we would call it in the West. It's alchemical in nature. And having undergone that and been through recovery through that, changing my worldview 180 degrees, coming to be I wouldn't even say a believer. I happen to know, at least as far as I'm concerned, that magic is real.
Yes.
I was completely renovated as a human being in almost every possible way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and that was the quote-unquote timeline shift where I finally felt like, okay, I'm here. We did it, and that process just continues. It's not you never really arrive. It's just like, you initiate, and a lot of people put a lot of stock into that term initiation. It's become very glamorous kind of word. It just means beginning. I just started, but there's a lot of people out there who haven't even begun.
Yeah, I recently interviewed Mavius Lynn. We were talking about Thelema, the various...
Love her, and Richard, love those guys.
Great speaker, great writer. And we spoke about Thelema, Crowley in particular, but we talked about the guardian angel, the crossing of the abyss. She sort of laid out sort of these end goals, not for every practitioner per se, but there are a select few who are called to the highest heights when practicing Thelema. In Golden Dawn tradition, is this parallel? Because he came from them, did he just deviate and go his own way, or does Golden Dawn have something similar in mind?
So Crowley effectively, he's not a good exemplar of what the Golden Dawn is, or for Golden Dawn magic. In effect, he and I love Mavius, I love Richard. I know many Thelemites that I truly respect, people in that current, but a lot of people start there and then make interpretations and interpolations of what the Golden Dawn is. So I'm not going to speak on Thelema as an overarching tradition, and
Sure.
I'm not going to speak to Crowley as a person. But I can, with authority, speak from the point of view of a Golden Dawn magician who knows a bit about Thelema. He inverted almost every aspect of the Golden Dawn, even to the point where in the Golden Dawn you give a particular sign, many people know it, with your left hand. He even changed that, you do it with your right. It became the dark twin of the Golden Dawn. Okay, and so it's not whatsoever an accurate depiction of anything that was going on in the Golden Dawn. He changed everything. And in two big ways, what I'll mention here. Not only did he invert the ritual, but he and mind you, in the Inner Order papers known as the Flying Rolls that were circulated among adepts, William Wynne Westcott, one of the founders of the Golden Dawn, admonished them: we do not invert our symbols, ever. Because to take a symbol that is just and upright and to turn it upside down is to make it its inverse. What's the opposite of equilibrated? Chaotic.
Right.
Okay, and then by their fruits shall you know them. So what effectively happened was he changed the magical formula. The magical formula of an Inner Order in particular is the magical battery, the engine for an order. The Golden Dawn was Isis, Apophis, Osiris. Osiris is slain, Isis mourns, Apophis, Typhon is triumphant, but Osiris rises. He comes back to life. Crowley saw this as an outmoded sort of thing, and a lot of his followers and acolytes and enthusiasts, even in the modern day, they agreed with him. Why? Because there was an emphasis on countercultural. counterculture, right? Counter-normativity. Right. The thing is, this stuff is organically countercultural. It doesn't need the affectation. It doesn't need the teen angst. You know, because now what happens is you're going to an extreme and you're picking a side, as it were. When the Golden Dawn tells you, like, if you set yourself against society, you're not in the middle. You are opposed, right?
You've chosen your side.
Now set yourself in an extreme. The Golden Dawn symbolism is riddled with triangles, riddled with threes, 3 pillars, 3 supernals, the triangle on the altar. The pedagogy there, at least in part, is that there are always 2 contending forces, always, and one which unites them eternally. As Golden Dawn magicians, we are not left-hand path, we're not right-hand path. We are middle pillar magicians. Ultimately, we use the whole tree, but we center ourselves in the middle. We become the mediators between those 2 contending forces. Okay, and so we don't need to have this affectation of debauchery and kind of, you know, an anti-Christian kind of sentiment. It becomes a fixation where the thing that you don't like now defines your identity. You know, which is insane, if persisted in, if not matured out of and from. So what happens is then is he changes the formula, and instead of the dying and resurrecting god of Osiris, which has to do with the soul awakening. It doesn't have to do with, give yourself and be good, and the spiritual formula is the soul being dead in the body, meaning forgetting itself, having no understanding of where it comes from, just being obsessed like I was with micro machines and fucking Ren and Stimpy, you know, and then eventually, eventually you wake up, and that awakening in the Platonic tradition we call the anamnesis, the remembering, that is the resurrection, that, you know, or at least one form of it. It's the beginning of that flowering. So he got rid of that because he misinterpreted it and he didn't like it. It smacked of Christianity. Right. And instead he supplanted Osiris with Horus. Now there are 3 forms of Horus in the work that he would have been familiar with. Okay, there's Horwer, or Horus the Elder. There's Hiru, who is Horus the Avenger, and then there's Heruperkriti, or Harpocrates, Horus the Younger. And he adopted not Horus the Avenger, not Horus the Elder. These 2 are the modes of action that the initiate may take in order to effectively, you know, come into the kingdom of their father Osiris, who is dead in the underworld, living in the underworld paradoxically. He chose the Horus the Younger, and he called it the eon of the crowned and conquering child. And I look around and I say, you know, if I didn't agree with him, sure, but goddamn if he wasn't right, because I see a lot of people, you know, the temper tantrums, the lack of the divestiture of responsibility and adulthood and things that have defined us as humans for millennia. It's all going away, and in preference for what? Me. What I want. What I want. The individual is now the center of the world. And so now that evolves into the mistake he made when he made contact with his higher divine genius, which he refers to as the Holy Guardian Angel. We never, ever in the Golden Dawn originally referred to it as the Holy Guardian Angel. That is a Crowley thing. In the Golden Dawn, it was only referred to as the higher divine genius. Why? Because the genius was Thomas Taylor's translation of the word daimon. Okay, right. Daimon. He didn't want to translate it as demon because he knew that stigma, it wouldn't be communicating the actual meaning. So the translation he went with was genius. So the higher divine genius is the personal daimon, according to the Hellenistic tradition, the Neoplatonic, the Hermetic tradition. It's the personal daimon of the individual that we're reaching upward towards. Now, the daimon is the god, effectively, of your microcosm.
Correct.
In the intermediary, it makes the impersonal, what you cannot touch or know, it makes it personal. Okay, it's an intermediary, but for all intents and purposes, it is not completely externalized. It is the angelic or bornless part of yourself, the Yetziratic. If you understand the Kabbalistic, the 4 or 5 worlds terminology, it's the Yetziratic part of us. But we conceive of it and we can interact with it as if it were something different. In reality, it's just a part of our spiritual architecture, our spiritual ontology that transcends our persona completely. It is born, it did not come in here with us. It stays unmired in materiality. So that's the God of your microcosm, meaning the things that it tells you, the way that it guides you as a psychopomp of sorts. That's for you. Now, what Crowley did is he took Aiwass, his holy guardian angel, his higher divine genius, and he mistook that for the God of the macrocosm, the God of the world. And it began to make pronouncements to him about what was going to happen in the world. There's going to be a new eon, and you are the prophet, so on and so forth. So in this way, it was a mutilation, an utter mutilation of the Golden Dawn. It's like the same way I would say that, there's a reason why they say and I don't mean this literally, but there's something poetic to it, that the devil is the imitator of God.
So would you say that the Golden Dawn, I don't know if I would say it being a Christian organization, but it sort of coincides with Christianity and simultaneously will. So if we take Crowley's idea of will, where would will fall into the curriculum of the Golden Dawn? It's will of the divine, the God of the macrocosm.
Well, in order to take your first steps in magic, you need to cultivate the will. There's not so much of an emphasis on this, this, I guess, what would we call it, Nietzschean will to power. It's that was kind of, I feel the way Crowley kind of took it, at least at a part of his life. He changed his mind about a lot of things, and Richard was the one who kind of showed me that. He didn't have a monolithic belief system. He changed many times, but at least about a few things. But it was more, they get that from Eliphas Levi, okay, or Eliphas Lewi, whatever you want to say. I'm not going to talk like that, Yeah. So you can do that and sound smarty pants. But all you out there in internet land. But Eliphas Levi, he really, really put an emphasis on the development of the will. And at one point, Crowley was calling himself the reincarnation of Eliphas Levi. The thing is, who knows if he was being facetious or anything like that, but certainly I think he took it to an extreme that it was not meant to go to, because on the second half of Levy's writings, he's talking about the divestiture of the self into the divine. And that's the second part of the path. You develop your will by learning how to concentrate it. Westcott writes in the Flying Rose that you cannot will two things at once. And this is a way of saying that if you lust after a result in magic, it will not be forthcoming, because you now desire two things instead of one. Okay, you don't just desire the thing that happened. You want the thing to work. Those are two desires, and they compete with each other. And to be able to focus on one to the exclusion of the other is the focusing of the will, at least as is taught in the Golden Dawn in part. Now, you use that will, right, the same way that you would to persevere with courage and determination up the holy mountain, which is very, very steep and jagged. Okay, and the way is long, hot, and tiresome. Okay, then when you make contact with even before you make contact with your higher divine genius, you have to ultimately aspire to divest yourself of your will and offer it, set it on the altar as an offering to that which interposes for you in between you and the absolute unknowable divine. So this is, we're getting into the meat here, which I like. I like talking about the real shit, but this is a major part of it. But you can't, to be a person in the outer world, you can't allow all of the pressures. They had this idea that we were constantly receiving impressions from other people who were either weaker or stronger than us in their what they called animal magnetism. Right? We call it charisma. They were either weaker or stronger than us, and they would dominate us with thoughts, presence, ether. Their etheric field would dominate us. They would, Dion Fortune talks about it in Psychic Self-Defense, about how she could tell somebody was attempting to put her into there was this whole paranoia of the somnambulistic state because of Mesmer, and of course Levy brought that back. But, and and all the seances going on at the time, the spiritism of the Theosophical Society and Allan Kardec. But anyway, there was a real fear of that, and so one of the things that you had to do was you had to pull yourself out of this rut of just being a doormat and being asleep and going through the world just like humdrum automaton status, and learn to question things and investigate things, and right, dare to will, but also dare to know, right? Dare to be wise was one of Westcott's magical mottos, sapere aude, so there is that, but those are the outer mysteries. Those are the lesser mysteries, and this is the problem you see constantly with the Golden Dawn. People get to Philosophus Portal, even they get to 5 = 6, Neophyte Adeptus Minor, but they don't go further. And so they only know the lesser mysteries, but they think they've gotten the greater, and then they go out there and start teaching people. And now we're in trouble. So it happens a lot. And now Tony Fuller, who's one of the greatest living historians of the Golden Dawn, and it's related sort of cultures and communities. He has access to materials that he showed me, but that are unfortunately they're not citable, which show that it's unlikely that Crowley ever received at the hand of Golden Dawn adepts the 5 = 6. It was more of a Mather's bonking him on the head. He didn't go through the ritual. He did end up going through it, but it wasn't through those initial sort of original channels of now that I'm not gonna hitch my wagon to that, but I'm just gonna offer that Tony Fuller kind of reached out to me with those materials when I wrote my first book. He said, "Hey, I love what you're doing, but there's also this piece. Keep it in mind."
Interesting to know. Okay. So for the practices of the Golden Dawn, and as you mentioned, the inner order, would you say then that this this practice of being a magician, and at least as your tradition in the Golden Dawn is teaching it, being in the inner order is still being a person of this world, so to speak? So, it's not like being a monastic where you have to give up the world in order to gain this nugget of inner knowledge. It's still your duty and is still to go out into the world even amidst this inner order and be an agent of change and will, as you've described, or do you need to make that sacrifice?
No, it's actually this was a big thing too, with one of the reasons why the Golden Dawn was formed. One of. Okay, there were many reasons, but one of the main projects, at least let's say the intellectual culture, the ethos of the beginning was that they didn't want this sort of world, not world hating, but world abandoning sort of thing going on. Westcott writes again, these are pedagogical, they're teaching manuscripts, these flying rolls. He writes, he says, long story short, the animal man is to be cared for, meaning your body, your desires, is to be cared for, but not petted. For even they who, the man who is a slave to his animal nature will practice vice in a forest. Okay, and he says, whereas the person who strives to remain balanced, and I'm paraphrasing this now, the person who strives to remain balanced without leaving the workaday world, he says, suffers a more severe discipline and therefore receives greater reward. So there are lessons. I brought this to my temple when I was, I always dreamt of being a monk. It was like a fantasy to me, and I brought this to my temple. What does this mean? And one of the mothers was like, I can't imagine having lived this life without learning the lessons of motherhood in this incarnation. And you can't experience that if you leave the world, even childbirth, the pain of childbirth, and the the immediate bonding that happens with the child. It's one of those things where there's wisdom in knowing that like both sides of the fence have lessons to teach us, and therefore we're better off keeping a foot in both worlds. Not only that, but as a good friend of mine, Michael R. Osborne, once said, quietism never helped anybody else. It never helped anybody else's life. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. At least that system, it reminds me of what you would find in the Buddhist tradition would be bodhisattva versus the arhat. So, at least Mahayana Buddhism encourages people to take the bodhisattva vow and stave off their personal nirvana so that they can save souls around them. In Vedanta, a more growing idea is to grow the amount of vijnanis instead of jnanis, because jnanis, they will isolate. They're only interested in their own personal enlightenment, but vijnanis want to bring enlightenment down to everyone. They want everyone to enjoy the bliss. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of like if you abandon the world, it's basically forsaking the world. Then the people that you're still around serving, they're not your goal anymore, even though you are still working to help them.
And it becomes self-obsession. It becomes self-obsession because even the desire to have no desires is a desire. And then you become obsessed with your own process to the point where you need to adopt these mental techniques to not be obsessed with it. Okay,
right. Right.
And it's one of those things where it's like if you devote yourself to a life of service, you're not really thinking about yourself. I remember that I was a musician for a really long time. That's what I wanted to do with my life, in my past life, so to speak, right? There is so much egotism in that. So much egotism, even if you play bass. There's so much, like, if we really we're just musicians, we'd all be in some fucking string quartet. But you want to be up there rocking and rolling and be in front of the crowd and feeling the energy. It's an egotism. Okay? I'm fully aware of that, even more so now on the back end of it, where I don't give a shit whether or not I'm cool. Which is like, that's like a 3,000-pound weight lifted off your shoulders. You hit 30, 35, and you're like, okay, that's awesome. I don't have to worry about that anymore. But I immediately devoted myself to a life of service, and one of the first ways I did this was by engaging in body work, physical therapy and massage therapy, Asian body work. Right. And one of the great unexpected boons, one of the things that surprised me the most was how good I felt simply because I wasn't thinking about myself.
Yes.
Like those 4 or 5 hours a day when I'm working on somebody, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking of how great of a healer I am. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to heal them. They're going to leave it. I'm just focused on this person, trying to really read their body with my hands.
Yes.
It like I just remember feeling so decompressed. Existentially, like, wow, I just went like 4 or 5 hours without thinking anything about myself. Like that, it feels like my insides took a bath. It was really, really healing. And I think that like you have to develop these exercises in those traditions to like force yourself to practice feeling loving kindness to other people, because you're effectively self-obsessed in a lot of ways, not completely, not entirely. I'm also filtering a lot of this through Western idiom and framework, which is not, it's part of the reason why I never jibed with it, because, what am I, an army of one? You go out there and you try and connect with other people that learn this stuff from Westerners, and it's like they're speaking a different language. Don't even get me started with the anatma bullshit, the complete misreading of that word in the Pali canons, and then completely ignoring and misinterpreting the Samyutta Nikaya, and saying, oh, there's no soul. You have no idea what you're talking about, but it's convenient. It's convenient for you. So it's these kinds of things made me kind of walk away from that inclination and really ground myself in just trying to figure out, okay, what am I? Who am I, right? Because the Western, the tradition of the Golden Dawn doesn't say that you have to die an ego death. It says that you have to subjugate your will to the higher part of yourself. Now, that's a divestiture of the will. Okay? But what you do is you live in duality with unity in mind. What does that mean? To live a pure and unselfish life is the way that we put it. An unselfish life. Okay? And in that way, to offer. Because think about, there's still a little bit of unenlightenedness in wanting to hoard enlightenment.
Yes.
It's almost like there's stages of enlightenment. The next stage after wanting to hoard it and worry about yourself is now giving it to other people. So like I see that as a I don't want to like create a verticality and a hierarchy, but I will say the way that I look at it is it's more of a greater removal of the obstructions that confuse the soul. So to want to give back, to look at the beauty of the world and the interconnectedness, how much people need us, and the fact that we understand that we don't really go until we all go. Nobody really gets to go until we all get to go. So that is to me, it's a greater cleansing of the awakening of the soul. The soul is more alive in a person like that. So at least that's my interpretation of it. But yeah, really long-winded, but I've got strong opinions. and that's the thing. The last part of that, just to bring it back, is that the daimon,
yes,
and the divine will that animates it has tied, and I'm going to deviate off into some Western stuff, has tied you into a specific moment, a kairos, that is your natal moment. And that astrological determinism that forms the person, the matrix of behavior, is there for a reason. Now, when you divest yourself of the will and unite with the daimon, you get to exercise greater free will. But the daimon then takes that astrological determinism and works in the world with it. So all of your baggage, all of your bullshit is your magic, but only when you are not the one making the decisions.
That's really awesome. I like that. Now, you did mention earlier your background. I think you mentioned growing up Catholic, and we talked a lot about the Christian parallels in truths that you could find in the Golden Dawn. But you still are a practicing Christian now? But what kind of Christianity is it that you're practicing? Well,
I hold a clerical ordination in what we call Pre-Nicene Christianity. I have a focus on the Hermetic texts and particularly the Gnostic Apocrypha, but I'm also not one of those people who wants to cosplay and have church for pagans, where it's you come to a something calling itself a church and pre-Nicene Christianity, and then the guy's going off on a tangent about Hermes Trismegistus. Where's Jesus? Where's the Christ? Better yet, right? So I do my best with anytime I offer Mass. I can give all 7 sacraments. I typically will use the Roman ritual with some adaptations. I've married people, I've baptized people, I've done confirmations, communions, exorcisms, that's my spiritual home. I knew it when I was serving it as a deacon. I served as a deacon for 7 years. I served, and I assisted the priest who, became a bishop and then ordained me. I served him, at the altar when we would give Mass in Asheville, to a community of, people who didn't know what they were interested in. They were drawn to the Mass of the Eucharist and the magic, the inherent magic in Christian ritual, because it's extremely magical.
Yes.
If you've seen the Mass of the Holy Eucharist, you have seen every single theurgic technique almost in one grand ritual. And the thing is, people that have been to seminary, the priests, they know that. They know that it's using the techniques and technologies of magic to accomplish a miracle. The only thing with them is that only our people are qualified to do it. Why? Because God gives us His grace. It's God performing the miracle. Yeah, but what part are you playing? Let's be forthcoming. Let's be honest. What part are you playing? Because the part that you're playing, standing up there in quote unquote persona Christi, almost in the God form of Christ, almost, right? I mean, theurgic magicians do the same stuff. Anyway, I was serving, and he couldn't make it. His car broke down one night. And he's like, "You give the Eucharist." I'm like, "I'm a deacon. I can't consecrate." He's like, "I have a pyx. Okay, that's a little a vial, a consecrated vial that holds the host. He's like, I have a pyx. You won't be able to do the wine, but you'll be able to administer pre-consecrated Eucharist." So I did it, and I remember I did everything but the consecration.
Okay.
And I wept. I've never felt like that in my life. I still have never felt like that. I only come close to feeling like that again when I give Mass. I felt for the first time in my life, in my sojourn in this place, that I was home. And so, yeah, I'm not lowercase o Orthodox. I'm not uppercase O Orthodox. We're not Orthodox in any way, meaning we don't agree with their doctrine and their dogma, but we are orthoprax, meaning our praxis, what we do, are the same rituals they do.
Because is it Eastern orientation, or is it Western, similar to Catholicism? Because
of the culture of our church and the way that really, I mean, both me and I'm in the South here. So most people are Protestant evangelicals. Mm-hmm. He and I actually are Catholic. So we grew up with that culture of high magic, high mass. And right. So it takes much more of a Catholic approach. But, I also spent my childhood in the Orthodox Church because my father was Orthodox. I have 3 godsons in that church. It means I baptized them in those rituals. Right. Okay, so I'm familiar with that. I prefer Catholic ritual. I prefer Orthodox doctrine. Okay, their theology sense. And all that stuff. Yeah. I prefer Catholic ritual. I truly do. There's a lot there, but we do more of. So as I said before, we adhere to the Roman ritual. Okay, so the Roman ritual is Roman Catholic. So that's more of it, but it's not exactly the Roman ritual, right? We got into a groove of these little kind of parts that influenced the both of us, that synthesized a beautiful Mass in a lot of really interesting ways. And of course, there are certain things that come down to us, from the patriarch and from, the larger sort of administrative bodies within our church, our overarching church, which is the ACGRC. And there are certain things we have to adhere to. Part of that is a chivalric component, which I really love. I really love the chivalric component, which was also Catholic. The yes. Templars were Catholic. Right. So there's that component there too, which is really cool.
And speaking of chivalry, so you became a Mason when?
I think 2021. It was the last thing I did.
Okay, so that was the period.
It was because I didn't want to join it. Because I'll put it frankly, two main reasons. The first being that it didn't have the female component, and so I thought it was off balance. And the second thing is that the Masons that I had known where I came from, I wasn't impressed. But the thing is, I only knew them very, very arm's length topically, but they just kind of seemed like regular workaday guys. Now, I see the value of having something where men can support men and learn from each other and teach each other in what women would, I guess, call a safe environment for them, right? That's what yes. women would call it when they do it. Right. And when we do it, it's extremely important because many of us, myself included, did not have good male role models. And these men are teaching us how to be fathers, husbands, employers, good employees, so on and so forth. I see the boon. And I also see the benefits of being a regular guy. I don't need to be fucking special. Magic doesn't make me special. I tell people all the time, think of how many people lived with power, intention, and fulfillment on this earth and never had to perform a ritual. If anything, I feel like magicians need that, like, crutch. I feel like I'm in special ed class, like summer school or something, spiritually. I'm not trying to paint everybody with that brush. The importance there is the humility, which I don't see in magical communities anymore. People's heads get wild,
Yeah.
wild when even if it's not like I'm some great magician, there's an exclusionism. There's an exclusion. There's always a vilification, a scapegoating, an us versus them type of thing. That's like, you hate that. You claim to hate that about the people you hate, and you are becoming them. So I see that constantly, and we're not getting anywhere with that. So ultimately, I think magicians need to understand that this stuff does not make you special.
And now, not to paint a picture that a bunch of magicians go joining Freemasonry, it's quite the opposite. It's mostly Christians, at least here in the United States. It's mostly Christian men that join Freemasonry, but a lot of people into esotericism, occult, and magic have joined the organization. But how would you say that being in Freemasonry has impacted your magical life and your practice, along with your Christian faith?
Well, it's grounded me. It's made me more of that person who wants to bring light out to the world, or at least what little of it that I possess, right? And there are many other people who possess much more than I do, but that doesn't relieve me of the responsibility of sharing what I know, right? Many hands makes light work. So Freemasonry taught me that, above all else. The Golden Dawn, things like that, they teach you the how. Martinism teaches you the why. And Freemasonry teaches you, who gives a shit? Go do something with it. Be a boon to your community, for Christ's sake, literally.
Yeah.
So it really has, and it's grounded and stabilized me because there's a network there that is all over the world. I have brothers in every city of the world almost, and they show it to me. When I go to London, they take care of me.
It's beautiful, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? When I go to Greece, when I go to Italy, I never imagined. And it's not some boys club where it's like, hey, have a cigar. Literally, one time my travel arrangements fell through, and I was speaking at Oxford University, no less, and I'm like, I can't go. And a brother took care of me, and he never asked for anything in return.
That's
Got
awesome.
me a hotel room, took me out to dinner, never asked for anything in return. It's not like I knew the guy very well at the time. He just officiated my wedding now, a couple months ago. He was the officiant. But it's, this is what happens in Masonry, that camaraderie, that brotherhood. It can be a real thing to call somebody frater or brother or even sister or soror, right? Because there are female Masons. And I just was with them at Esotericon. I gave the keynote presentation at Esotericon in Manassas, Virginia this year. It was a tremendous success. And there were co-Masons. There were lady Freemasons. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
It is, and I believe in all sorts of, I believe in an all-male Freemasonry. And I believe in a co-ed Freemasonry. And I believe in an all-female Freemasonry. Not everything has to be for everyone all the time.
Right.
It's actually insane to want that.
Yeah, I read off earlier, but you are also a part of the Royal Arch Masons as well?
Yeah, York Rite. So, yeah, obviously Royal Arch is chapter. It's the sort of the first part of those, I believe, 14 degrees. But, yeah, York Rite. I went all the way to Knight Templar, which is a beautiful degree.
And I think the only thing that they sort of have added into their mythos as opposed to others is more of an emphasis on Christianity and promising to defend the faith, those sorts of things, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. You do, in some jurisdictions, right? Because for anybody that's listening and doesn't know, Freemasonry is decentralized in the United States. There's not one overarching body that governs what everybody does, thinks, and says. The highest authority in any given state is the state's Grand Lodge. So there are some jurisdictions, and it's the same. It's kind of a similar thing in the York Rite. Some jurisdictions and some what I would call, I guess, commanderies, they have their own requirements as to whether or not you take a vow of belief in, the Trinitarian doctrine of Christianity, and I believe that's also in the some forms of Rosicrucian, sort of paramasonic bodies. But this is an actual appendant body, the York Rite. And yeah, you do have to pledge to defend the faith. And it's a serious thing. A lot of Masons that I know have actually not done it because they haven't, they don't feel that they could actually say those words and mean it. And I think that's tremendous for them to put that much faith in or that much importance, that much stock in their word. A lot of people don't do that anymore. They say whatever they need to say to get whatever they want, okay? And then you end up missing the whole point because you don't develop, which is the point of something like that. So, yeah, there is a component. I don't understand the York Rite to the same degree that I understand craft Freemasonry. I don't have that same familiarity with it because where I am, the body is languishing. It's not really doing very well, okay? Whereas in Freemasonry, I've seen these degrees a lot. I've picked them apart. A lot is published. It's much harder to get hold of York Rite ritual,
Right.
So there's that, but there is a strong Christian component, and for somebody like me, who is not, I'm not actually, like, I'm Catholic only because I was baptized, confirmed, and took communion in the Catholic Church, but I don't feel like I'm a Catholic. I don't feel like
you were told you were Catholic, so that's it. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's a lot more than that because they dunked me in water, shoved bread in my mouth, listen to my dirty secrets, and then told me to go pray the Hail Mary 6 times like some sort of weird prescription. It's an involved process, but I identify as a Christian regardless because you'd have to be either patently evil or technically insane to read about the life of Christ and read his words and think that person was evil.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Ike Baker, thank you so much for appearing on this podcast. This was a great interview. And just to wrap this up, you have your next book coming out. Can you give the title again and what events you got coming up to promote it?
Sure. My next book is with Inner Traditions Bearing Company, and it's coming out in November. It's available for pre-order now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can get it pretty much anywhere, any major book retailer. It's available for pre-order. I think it's like 18 or 19 bucks. It's called Esoteric Mythology, the Transformative and Generative Power of the Imagination. And it's I worked on it long, and I'm still working on it, but worked on it long and hard, putting the finishing touches on it. And then I'm actually in September, I'm going to begin a book tour and promotion for it. I've done a couple of talks already this year, but it's really going to pick up in September and October. I'm going to be in New York in September 5th at Amityville Apothecary. The 18th and 19th of September, I'm going to be in Seattle. I'm going to be speaking for Verity Lodge as well as speaking once again for the Esotericism and Freemasonry Conference alongside Lon Milo Duquette.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, and October, going to, I believe it's the 25th, 23rd, 24th, and 25th. I believe I'm going to be in California, going to be doing a talk for the Adina Sentin Research Library, another group out there as well, and then Philosophical Research Society. I go there every year, so it's a big pilgrimage for me. And then November 6th, 7th, and 8th, I'm going to be in Austin, Texas, speaking in person at EnokiaCon, which is going to be huge this year. I mean, so many people are going to be there. Like, it's a gathering of the wizards for sure.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's insane who's going to be there, and I'm so happy to have been a part of it from the beginning. Frater RC does a really great job putting this. I'm so excited. And then the 18th and 19th, I have something that I'm not allowed to talk about fully yet, but I think those who know can guess. I'm going to be in Amsterdam for 2 sessions, 2 talks. One of them is a dialogue with a very astute professor, and the other is to promote the book. Then I'm going to, on the the 21st and 22nd. I'll be in Parma, Italy with La Società dello Zolfo, the Society of Sulfur. Those guys are fantastic. I've done some work with them online. I'm going to do a 2-day retreat with them. And then the 23rd and 24th, I'll be speaking at Watkins Books and Atlantis Bookshop, respectively, in London. I may have a few more things in that area, but the 27th, I'm heading back to the States, and I am hanging 10 for a little while.
That's exciting. I'm excited to check out the new book. Perhaps we'll talk after that book comes out and we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, I'll get you a galley version so you can, if you are able to read PDFs. I am not, but if you are, I'll give you an advanced copy of it.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, sure. Ike, thank you for coming on, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks, brother. I hope you have an excellent evening. Thank you so much for having me.
That was my interview with Ike Baker. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a like and subscribe. Be sure to hit the bell icon if you're following us on YouTube so you can get notification every single time we drop a new episode. If you are following us on Spotify or any other podcast app, be sure to follow us, keep up with the content, and as always, be sure to leave a comment anywhere you find us. We will see you guys next time.